In the 1990s, after China imported the Su-27 production line and localized it, it was named J-11. Since then, China has made various improvements to the J-11 fighter jet, resulting in the derivation of various models such as the J-11A, J-11B, J-11BS, J-11BG, and so on. In addition to the above models, China has also developed a J-11D, but this type of fighter did not enter into service due to various reasons. German military expert Andreas Rupprecht, in November 2022 military media Hushkit, but also published an article introducing the J-11D fighter, and that this fighter is more powerful than the J-16 fighter and ultimately did not serve as a kind of regret. However, although the J-11D is powerful, the German military expert's words are biased. The J-11D's demise is the choice of the times and the needs of the Air Force, and it is not a pity that it is not in service. In fact, the J-11D's development era is very interesting, which happens to be the stage of China's aviation industry's rapid technological development and output results. Before the J-11D, China had already mass-produced the J-11B. However, the J-11B was a very strong emergency fighter, which used some relatively outdated technologies in order to be produced and put into service quickly. For example, in terms of radar, J-11B still uses pulse Doppler radar, but at that time, China's active phase array radar technology has already taken shape. If J-11B is put into service a few years later, it will be able to use the advanced active phased array radar. For example, in terms of materials, the J-11B is highly similar to the J-11A in terms of fuselage materials, which are all relatively primitive aerospace industry materials. But at the same time, China's new composite material technology is also in the rapid development stage. These new composite materials can greatly reduce the weight of the fuselage, so that the aircraft have a lighter empty weight and greater load capacity. If the J-11B can be put into service a few years later, it can also enjoy these breakthroughs in material science technology, just like the current Chinese J-16 and J-15T fighters, which use a lot of these new composite materials. As a result, the J-11B can be said to be a kind of fighter aircraft with more technical regrets, and the J-11D is to some extent specially designed to make up for such regrets. But the J-11D is a pity because it is a contemporary program with the J-16. Compared to the J-11 series of fighters, the J-16 has a great deal of technical updates. After all, the J-11D is a fighter that was developed entirely with the Su-27 as the technical template, and it is difficult for it to completely jump out of the framework of the Su-27 in terms of design, and the limitations are also relatively large. However, J-16 is different, although this fighter is also designed with Su-27 as the template, but when using Su-27 as the template, J-16 is more borrowing Su-27's design ideas, not completely based on Su-27's design. At the end of the day, the J-11D has a very obvious disadvantage compared to the J-16. That is, its use is far less than that of the J-16. The J-16 is a multi-purpose heavy fighter that has been in service in China for a long time, and it can not only fight in the air, but also mount anti-ship missiles for anti-ship operations and aerial bombs for ground strikes. Although the J-11D is also designed to have strong multi-purpose capability, the J-11D is obviously inferior to the J-16 in terms of multi-purpose capability. Because the Su-27 itself as an air superiority aircraft, its fuselage structure in the design of the time did not take into account the situation of large mount. The wing is difficult to withstand a large mount. Although the J-11D makes up for some technical defects of the Su-27, its mounting capability can hardly reach the same level as that of the J-16 without stepping out of the design framework of the Su-27. If the J-11D is also designed as a multi-purpose fighter, it will be very much like a weakened version of the J-16 in terms of performance. This made Xinfei design the J-11D with a differentiated design, designing the J-16 as a multi-role fighter and the J-11D as a pure air superiority aircraft. However, the problem comes again if J-11D is only a pure air superiority aircraft. then it will be compared with J-20. Under the comparison, J-11D, as a fourth-generation aircraft, naturally cannot be compared with J-20, which is a fifth-generation aircraft. It is important to know that in the modern air battlefield, air superiority aircraft are very focused on one ability, that is, the over-the-horizon strike ability. With the development of radar technology, the airborne radar on the warplane, as well as the airborne early warning aircraft, has been able to detect enemy aircraft at a distance of hundreds of kilometers. At the same time, with a long-range air-to-air missile range of more than 150 kilometers or even up to 200 kilometers, warplanes again have the ability to strike to their own very long distance on the discovery of enemy aircraft. Therefore, the modern air battlefield depth of the battlefield is often in dozens of kilometers or even hundreds of kilometers. As a result, the over-the-horizon strike system has begun to take shape. Although J-11D can get the ability of over-the-horizon strike by advanced radar and long-range missiles, in the over-the-horizon battlefield, J-11D will still fall into a disadvantage against those first-line air superiority planes, and the reason is that the J-11D does not have the ability of stealth. The reason is that the J-11D does not have stealth capability. If the fighter has stealth capability, it can shorten the distance for the enemy to find itself and thus gain a greater advantage. Originally, radar can detect an ordinary fighter at a distance of 150 kilometers, but when facing a stealthy fighter, the radar may need to get closer to the fighter at a distance of 50 kilometers in order to detect the other side. When enemy fighters have stealth capability, and we don't, there will be a situation when they are 100 kilometers apart, the enemy can detect our fighters, but our fighters don't detect the enemy fighters. At this time, the enemy will be able to carry out over-the-horizon strikes on our warplanes, and our warplanes can only be passively beaten. If China doesn't have J-20, then J-11D as a pure air superiority aircraft is indeed a good fighter. But the problem is that China has stealthy drones like the J-20, so it would be a complete waste of resources for China to develop an air superiority aircraft without stealth capability. So you can see that the J-11D is completely squeezed out of the ecological niche by other fighters. In terms of air combat capability, it is inferior to the J-20 fighter, and in terms of multi-purpose capability, it is inferior to the J-16 fighter. Under the rapidly changing needs of the Air Force, the J-11D can only be dismounted.